Hello everybody, I am Ben from Team Panic, and today we're going to be looking at how my antweight overhead saw robot Vogon Poetry performed at ARCs Hybrid World 3. So much like the past two videos on this, the first day I only have time-lapse footage for, which is the first two fights here in this video. So we're going to be showing that time-lapse footage, and I'll kind of do my best to explain a little bit about how things went after that. But we might as well just jump straight on into this because we've done a bunch of videos on this and we've seen all the upgrades and everything that's happened to this recently. So let's just jump on in there. The first fight was up against a robot called the Force, which is a four-wheel drive lifting style robot. This is how that went. So it went okay. We did get the win, but there was a really good shoving match back and forth. I did manage to scoop the Force up a number of times. I did manage to pull off a track or one of his O-rings that runs one of his sets of wheels on one side. So it was technically down to a three-wheel drive, which did help out quite a lot. But despite the fact that I pinned him quite a number of times, I did not a lot of damage. Now, on the day, I attributed this to what the Force is printed out of. It's printed, like the whole chassis is a nylon print, and I just assumed that the nylon was quite resistive to the saw. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But on the whole, didn't do a whole lot of damage, despite having a number of really good cut attempts and a number of really good angles on him and stuff. Thought I should have been doing more. Had him close to the pit a few times, kind of early and mid-fight, but didn't take those opportunities or didn't push those opportunities too far because I was more aiming to try and do the damage with the saw and win the fight that way. But then, it got clear that the saw wasn't doing too much. I actually thought that it might have been a battery issue, that maybe the saw was running too slow, but I had just charged the robot overnight, so I was thinking that was a bit of a weird thing, but it was something that I thought might be the case. Anyway, it finally did end up pushing them down the pit and winning that fight. The next fight up is against a robot called Flipping Awesome, which is a flipper, surprisingly enough, built by one of the organizers of the event. So again, this was a good back and forth. There was lots and lots of back and forth between the robots, lots of, using our various implements against each other. So saw versus flipper and a lot of those kind of interactions. But again, I didn't feel like I was doing a whole lot of damage. There was some nice nicks up in his weapon linkage system where there was kind of some exposed corners and stuff of plastic, but there were some really good shots that I got right next to his switch that barely scraped the surface and definitely did a whole lot less damage than I've been doing here in test boxes and stuff. So I was quite confused because this one was it's either a PLA or an ABS chassis. It's not printed out of nylon or anything. So I was assuming that I should be doing a whole lot more damage than I was, but it just didn't happen. And then of course, I got pitted at the end of that fight. So we did, of course, lose that one, which isn't where I wanted to be. And I mean, the damage not being there was really my main concern. So I thought that it might be the saw blade too, but I also knew that that was the last fight of the day, and that my next fight for the following day was going to be up against Antimatter. Now, the last time we fought Antimatter with the saw, they bought some mesh armor that sat flat along the top of their robot and then kind of bumped up on the sides to give like wheel guards essentially. They saw that they were going to be fighting me and they pulled out their new armor for the competition, which was basically like they've got a wedge at the front and then instead of a flat top plate, it was just a massive hill of wire. So I knew that the saw blades that I was running probably weren't going to do much because that massive bump of chicken wire that they put on there was going to keep me out. So I went home that night and I changed the weapon blade over for a 60mm diamond grinding blade that I'd found online somewhere. In doing that, I also did a quick test box run and realized that the saw was running backwards. Yeah. So the first 2 fights of the day, I was running the saw backwards. Fine. Oh man, there were so many things going on in the lead up to this event that I honestly didn't think that I'd actually changed the wiring on this, which is why I didn't think to test the saw blade's direction, because I thought that I hadn't changed any of that and it should have just been spinning the same way it always span. Yeah, no. Lesson learned. Always check whether or not you are spinning the weapon the right way. Especially on things like this where it is very, very critical. Anyway, so I attached the new weapon, I got everything spinning the right way, and then it was time for the fight against Antimatter. So you can see what I mean with that giant top armor they put on there. That is ridiculous, realistically. There's nothing I can do about that with a saw blade configuration like I have here, or at least with these or the diamond blades that I have. I think I have a way around it. I think I have a strategy and a plan for it for the next event. However, yeah, I've learned that they watch these videos, so I'm not going to really talk about that because I don't want them to counterplan for the counterplan, because otherwise we're just going to end up chasing ourselves around in circles here. So yeah, needless to say, there'll be some other stuff going on the robot specifically for Antimatter in the January meet, but we'll talk about that in the fight report for the January meet, because that's the only time I'm going to feel comfortable doing that. Yeah, basically, yeah, that was an interesting fight. The grinding disc wasn't as useful as I wanted it to be. It wasn't great against his plastic armor, and obviously I couldn't actually get it through the big hump of wire that he had sitting over the top there. So it was what it was. I mean, it was a little bit useless, like I said, but it did actually allow me to stay in the fight after I'd lost one wheel, because I'd lost the wheel and then was kind of upside down, but was technically running on that weapon. Because it was a diamond disc, it was just kind of like skitting off the ground and allowing me to like drive-ish with one wheel and a weapon. So yeah, that was interesting. Actually using a weapon as a wheel was kind of a first for me, I think. I mean, I've bounced along the floor upside down before, and I've had weapons hit the ground to kind of keep the robot moving, but never quite so wheely as that actually was in that fight, which was quite interesting. And also, that fight went the full distance, so it was a draw. And one of the main things that kept me in that fight was using the wheel or using the weapon as a wheel. So while I'm not sure I want to keep using the diamond wheels or the diamond cutoff discs, I might have them as a backup option for certain fights where I think I'm going to be upside down a lot, because that was an interesting strategy. Now, also, I will say during that fight, so we have a little piece of wire out the back here, which is the self-riding arm. And during that fight, because we were upside down for so much of that fight, the self-riding arm kind of got bent and loosened up a little bit. And I only realized that about 30 seconds before diving into the arena for the next fight. So I did put a little bit of hot glue on that, and I did try and bend it straight, but that is something to be thinking about. So what is the next fight? The next fight is up against Dr. Mad Spins a Lot, which is a robot and by the same builder as the Beetleweight, Dr. Robot a Lot or something along those lines. I can't remember. The two robots are very, very similar in name. And also a first-time builder for this event. They built a horizontal spinner, and I was actually quite excited about this fight. It had seemed like a pretty capable horizontal spinner all the way through the event up to this point, and I was raring to try out the new HDP front armor that we put on in a recent upgrade. And of course, having fought a flipper and, two flippers and a wedge, we hadn't had a chance to try that out yet. So I was going to this one pretty excited to try out all of the new armor on the robot. The only thing that did kind of, set me on edge here a little bit is this fight was critical. It was my final fight of the round robin, and it was a win you're in finals, lose and you're out of finals type scenario. Hit me! I'm moving! Stop counting! What do I say about that fight? There's a few things I want to clarify. As I mentioned at the start of this piece about this fight, this was a winning you're in, losing you're out scenario. So I really wanted to do everything I possibly could to win this fight and make it through into finals. Now, the first couple of hits were really nice. They put some little dings on the HDPE, and I'm really happy with how the HDPE holds up, but we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But then I got stuck upside down up against the wall, and because the self-riding arm kind of got last minute janked into place and a little bit of hot glue on it, it didn't do its job and it didn't push me back up. It should have been able to self-right from that position, even up against the wall. Tilting the arm lower, it should have like skidded the robot back and everything should have been fine. But with the arm where it was and all of that, didn't work out. So I was stuck up against the wall and I was lowering the arm. Actually, no, sorry. Before lowering the arm, I kept the weapon powered and jammed it into the floor, hoping to do the same thing I'd done with the grinding disc. And I didn't do that. Instead, I cut a hole in the floor. Whoops. So I stopped. I stopped the weapon, or at least ran it slower and stopped trying to jam it into the ground because I knew that wasn't going to get me anywhere, and it certainly wasn't going to get me off of the wall, which is what I was needing to do to maybe have some chance of the self-riding stick flicking me back over again. And then I started kind of crab walking down the wall by raising and lowering the weapon, and also by running the wheels up against the wall to try and get a little bit of like cantilever going to kind of kick off the wall. Unfortunately, the event organizers did not see it that way and started counting me out. And then I half jokingly and very much half not jokingly was like, "Hey, what are you doing? I'm still moving. Like, don't count me up." But they didn't see what I was doing as controlled movement. Now, with me doing that and saying, "Don't count me out," there was a bit of confusion as to when that fight ended. And when I got stuck all the way over in the corner over there, I and my opponent thought that things were still going, but technically we're on like the last 2 seconds of the count out. And I called for him to hit me again, hoping that what would happen is that he would hit me and bounce me off the wall and we could keep fighting. And he did hit me. Technically it was a late hit, but like I said, there was some confusion going on and I did ask him for the hit, so I am in no way like saying it was a bad thing. I told him to hit me and he hit me, so thank you, basically. He did hit me, it didn't get me unstuck off the wall, I took the loss, and that was that. I mean, the one thing that did happen is because I stupidly asked to be hit while I was upside down against the wall with my electronics exposed to him, and he did hit me. He hit the ESC, and it was the only one I had. There were technically spares in the Melty, but by this point the Melty was basically packed away. So there wasn't anything I could do to get the weapon back up and running. Not that it really mattered because I was out of the competition. So this one was a weird fight for me. Yeah, I am not too happy with how I performed or behaved in this fight. Yeah, I am happy with how the HDPE held up and how the new armor held up. That performed really, really well. But personally, I feel like I could have done this better. I mean, it was, yeah, just a case of it was that winning you're in, losing you're out, and the weekend had been rather rocky, shall we say, with the Melty Brain and Annie and, you know, now this, and having run the weapon backwards for a whole day and all. It was a time. Not that really excuses things, but at the same time, it is, you know, that is the context of the fight, shall we say. Anyway, we took the loss. That was a thing. And we didn't have any more fights that we could do. Thankfully, though, there was a rumble. Now, I was, of course, excited to go in this rumble. I couldn't get the weapon going, as I mentioned, because the ESC had been hit and I didn't have time to find the spares that I had and rip them out of the Melty and resolder them into this, and that would have been a whole time and a whole lot of mess and a whole lot of work. So I just threw the robot straight into the rumble, basically with the idea that I wanted to do further destructive testing on the armor and see how we went, because there was going to be a couple of horizontal spinners, at least one vertical spinner. I was just down to get hit and see what happened. that was very, very interesting data. Having that fight, I had a lot of fun in that fight, but some very interesting points for me to note from that fight. One, it would have been great if the saw was working because there were some really good grabs on people that would have cut straight through some top plates. But let's not dwell on the things we couldn't have done in that fight. Let's dwell on the things that did actually happen. So first of all, one of my two little HDPE scoopies at the front here, they got hit and flicked up like this, which is interesting. They are only held on with one bolt, so I thought that type of thing might be able to happen, and lo and behold, absolutely did indeed. So I need to do something better with those, maybe 2 bolts, maybe 1 bolt, and then like a bit of hot glue or something to stand those off to make them less likely to hook back up again. I don't know, but something there needs to happen. Then we got hit later on in the fight that popped a wheel off, and that popped a wheel off actually because this whole front armor section disconnected, and I really don't know how well this is going to show up on camera. But yeah, so this whole front armor section disconnected, and because of the way this armor is bent, which is slightly inaccurately, there's a little bit of play and a little bit of spring in this. So when the mounting point gave way, the armor sprung out and kicked the wheel off the robot, which is not ideal. However, having said that, the HDPE itself survived all of those hits really, really well. It didn't actually, nobody made it through the 2mm HDPE, which I was quite surprised about. I thought that somebody might make it all the way through the 2mm and I would need 3mm or something else. But I was, I was pleasantly surprised, shall we say, that nobody made it through this armor. So I just need to do a better job at fabricating this next time and change up my mounting points, maybe add a little bit of weight into the mounting points so that we actually have something that we can put bigger, better bolts through that are going to, and it's going to stay in place when we tell it to do that. Yeah, lots of interesting data from that. And also, I need to make sure that this self-righting arm doesn't change. I think what I'm going to probably do is reprint this arm again, the motor mount arm, and print the self-righting arm into the motor mount arm all in one go. Because if I print it all together, then it's solid and I know the thing will self-right every single time, and I'm not relying on this flimsy little piece of metal that, you know, in certain fights will bend and then put me at a disadvantage in other fights. So there's a lot of learning that is going into this thing, and there will be a version 4, version 5, I can't remember where we're up to now, but there will be a new version of this coming out at some point in the near future, definitely before January, because I need to rebuild it before January. Like I said, there will be some of these changes that I've talked about here that we'll actually do, and some of them that is going to be specifically for Antimatter that we will not do because they are a surprise. Anyway, that is going to be it for this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed that one, and I will see you in the next one.